Story 1. Drippy, I'm a grown woman, so it's been years since I don't live by my mother's rules. But there's one thing I will always respect. Never go to bed with a wet hair. For my mother, it meant catching a cold, but for me, it was something else entirely. Last night I decided to break this rule. The weather was too warm and I had to wash my hair because I was feeling all sweaty and gross. But I hate using the hairdryer, so I just used a towel and went to sleep. The whole night, thumping noises coming from under my bed kept me awake. They were only on my side of the bed. Since my husband is out of town, I roll to his side, but the noises shifted as well. I know most people would be bothered, but I decided to get up, go to the bathroom, and blow dry my hair once for all. It's not too much work anyway. When I got back, the noises stopped. I spent good 20 minutes trying to sleep, but I was too happy, so I had to ask, "Drippy, is that you?" A soft thump was all the answer I needed. You see, I was a lonely kid. I only had two friends, Gummy, my guinea pig, and Drippy, the monster under the bed. The monster part is so prejudiced. They are actually very sweet. Drippy would never let me sleep, having done something I believed to be wrong. Once I stole some change from my mother's purse to buy candy, and he never stopped thumping and making the bed shake until I put it back. Sometimes I couldn't sleep at night because I was sad and lonely. Then I would ask him questions, and Drippy would answer with a single thump for yes or a shake for no. He was so smart and cared about me. I named him Drippy because sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night to soft dripping noises coming from under the bed. I never knew what it was, but I didn't mind. It helped me sleep, like gentle rain on your windowsill. He was there for me even in my teenage years, when I made friends and forgot him for a long time. The day I smoked weed and didn't like, but decided to keep smoking anyway to be cool. He violently shook my bed until I promised him I would never do it again. Ever since I moved from my parents' home in the rural area, I lost contact with Drippy, but somehow he found me. I didn't have much sleep, but woke up full of joy and was singing while making myself breakfast. I don't have kids and work from home, so sometimes I watch my neighbor's kids. Today, I had little Flora over. Flora is usually a quiet kid, but today she was a bit agitated, so I decided to take a break and play with her. She's 4 years old. Probably some running around will be enough to have her sound asleep in the couch while I get some work done. We agreed to play hide and seek after finding each other a few times. I was counting when I heard her tiny footsteps disappearing in the general direction of my bedroom. I looked for her everywhere, but she was nowhere to be found. I couldn't even hear breathing, laughing, or the noise of her shoes changing hiding spots. My apartment is not big, so there's nowhere else she could have been. Then I remembered an episode from my childhood. Gummy once went under my bed and disappeared. I cried for days until my parents found him somewhere completely unrelated. He was a lot chubbier and his fur had a different color, but my mom told me guineas are all like that. They change colors all the time. That's their magic. He never changed colors again and forgot all the tricks I had taught him, but I loved him anyway. So here's the thing. I think Flora tried to hide under the bed and Drippy took her somewhere else. I'll ask him later. In the meantime, I was obviously worried and anxious to tell my neighbor that her daughter went missing. but I made sure to tell her it was very likely Flora would appear somewhere else in a few days. As a result, my neighbor hates me and made it clear she plans to report me to the police. Today I couldn't sleep because the dripping sounds were so loud and kinda unnerving. Drippy told me he hasn't seen Flora, but I think he's lying for some reason. I asked if I could go under the bed, check it out, and he said yes. Story 2. A deal with the devil. 5 months ago, I made a deal with the devil. It sounds so dramatic, but it is so simple, and once you know how, it is hard not to. But you must resist, for if you don't, you will regret it later. Trust me on that. First, a little something about me. I'm what you'd call a slacker, a slothful waster, or even a bundle of disappointment. That's all anyone's ever called me. I've made peace with that. Truth be told, these epithets have become more truly my friends than any other I've ever known, following me everywhere I go and in all things I do. But it does hurt sometimes, for I'm not without feelings of my own, and I have periodically been beset by resentment for these companions of mine. It was in one of these periods of discontent that the devil approached me with his deal. That's what he always does to all of his victims. It's been said before, more often than not on this very website, that when the devil approaches you, he'd affect a character that you'd immediately like and be impressed by. Is absolutely true. When he first came to me, he seemed more than anything a dazzling showman brimming with charisma and a touch of ridiculousness, not done like a circus clown. I'm sorry I can't be more dramatic, but the truth of the matter is, it happened when I was just sitting at home eating popcorn, and the details of the encounter are too hazy, for reasons I'd rather not divulge. Suffice it to say, I found less than healthy ways to deal with my problems. I remember only 2 things. The first, an unearthly, unforgettable orange golden glow emanating from his person, and the second, the indescribable hatred in his words, which seemed to drag from a deep well of loathing and blinding rage hidden within him. His offer was simple. He asked of me only that I be a tether for him to this world, and to support him however I felt in all his endeavors. In return, he promised me hindsight is always 20/20. Isn't it what I had always desired most from this world? To be known, talked about, and a subject of strong feeling among my peers. He was very outspoken about his plans, schemes of evil rarely witnessed before in the world. But I thought then that he was only posturing. Surely he would never divulge his plans to a mere mortal. How foolish of me! Each day the burden in my heart grew heavier and heavier still, and beset by guilt, I began seeing him everywhere. When I watched TV, he would become one of the characters and spew his hatred and rage on all others. When I walked the streets, I would so often be ambushed by the bright orange glow that I had begun to dread as the very symbol of evil. I have spent the last 5 months evading him, and worse still, strangely, it is as if his aura clings to me. Everywhere I go, I can feel eyes digging into my very self, disbelieving, disapproving eyes, more full of contempt and dislike than ever before. He offered me a chance to be noticed and felt strongly about, and he has given me that. But the deal is done. It can no longer be called off. I have but myself to blame for that. But however bad any of these things are, none of them come quite close to the occasions I dread most. his meetings with me. He summons me at times when I least expect. He ambushes me with the sharpest weapons he possesses, his words. For hours on end he would speak on about the most abhorrent matters imaginable. As I stood motionless and wide-eyed behind him, my lips parted in disbelief and disorientation. The orange-golden glow exuded by him piercing my eyes. He would unravel his dark plans for us. Plans I don't care to elaborate here. 2 weeks ago yesterday, all this came to a head. I have said before that he enjoys ambushing me at times when I had my guard down, and that day he unraveled the worst surprise he had for me, staring at me in 5 bold, short words from a piece of paper as white as chalk, was the ultimate denunciation and condemnation of all I had endured, the greatest and most heartbreaking disavowal I have ever encountered, written in a nondescript, matter-of-fact way with the words, "Trump picks VP Mike Pence," an authentic page from the diary of Chris Christie. Story 3, The Message Warning. It was in the last day of the year 2015 in which we received our message. We were preparing for a New Year's party, and we were cleaning out the attic. We thought there'd be chairs. What he thought instead was a cassette tape player. It was, no doubt, from at least the 80s. My sister was the one to find it. I was the one to press play. Neither of us had any idea of how to work the thing. Pressing play hadn't helped. My sister realized the volume was down and turned it up. Unfortunately, we had one more issue. It was slow beyond recognition. I left the attic by this time. We didn't have time to fix an old cassette player. My sister, on the other hand, stayed. I started getting ready for the party we were throwing for New Year's Eve, and continued my work for at least an hour until I realized my sister had not come down to help me yet. "Rachel, you okay?" I called. There wasn't a response. I called again. Rachel, frightened something could have happened. I ran up to the attic. I opened up the door and found her listening to the cassette tape. "Rachel, I thought you were hurt. Why didn't you answer me?" She looked up to me with a blank stare and a glimmer of fear. "Sorry," she mumbled. "I got the player to work, see?" "Yeah, I see, but we need to get ready. In 15 minutes people are going to be showing up to the party." "Hold on," she said, fumbling with the player. "What? Listen to this." "No, didn't you hear? People will be coming soon." I assessed the situation. I could finish getting ready for the party alone. Rachel clearly wasn't going to be much help. Fine then. I left the attic and ran around the house, fixing a table, getting snacks. When I finished, the doorbell rang almost as I put the last bag of chips on the table. The party was going well. Around 11:45, the most people arrived. We were all excited for New Year's. What would the future bring? The best moment only lasted a few moments. This was because my sister ran down the stairs to call me into the attic. Her face was pale. I went upstairs. What's wrong?" "Listen to the tapes," she commanded. The tape played. Case 205A, James Edmund Brown of the Charles Millennium Asylum, certifiably insane. He claims he's from the future. Hello? Hello. Another voice in the tape called, presumably James Edmund Brown. "Hi, I need to send a message. I could tell you about all other kinds of catastrophe, but I need to warn you about the end. This isn't some terrorist attack. This isn't some war. Heck, this isn't even what I'd call a natural disaster. This is an unstoppable event, unless we can find some way to prevent it from ever happening. Let's see, I'm from 2016, and it just happened, like clockwork. First we heard the booming. Then, at exactly midnight, the meteors came. We literally never even saw them coming. They just appeared out of nowhere. The thing I'm most scared about is whenever someone finds this message. Hopefully it won't be too late. The universe just works like that. Sometimes something is just meant to happen. With hope, dear listener, you may not just find this tape the same day the end happens. Please listen. Whatever you're doing, just stop. Try to leave. There's no point in making a shelter. You'll die anyway. I'm not even sure how I'm still alive. Please, just the tape ended. Rachel looked at me with fear in her eyes. Rachel, we'll be fine. Wasn't this guy in a mental hospital or something? But what is this tape doing here? And I thought I heard loud bangs. So James Brown mentions booming in his explanation of his end. I heard them too. They were just fireworks. It's New Year's Eve. Of course, people will be celebrating. This is why you've got to stop watching the Sci-Fi Channel. I don't know. She seemed calmer. By the time we got down, the people were already slow dancing to Forever Young. It was 11:59 when the house shook. Everybody screamed until one of my friends calmed all of them down. It's just an earthquake, my friend said. Rachel was the only one still screaming. She ran outside. I yelled her name and followed her to the door. She left the house, and when I got to the door, I found her out in the street. My watch beeped. It was 12 o'clock. Like clockwork, the stars fell. Meteors. We found out what the future would bring, and we were horrified. Story 4. The Serene Cyclist. I used to live in Cambridge a while back, which is a small city smack in the middle of England, best known for the university. It is as large as the city itself. But I was there for work. I had a few friends around the city, and Cambridge being a very green city, it is the Cambridge way to cycle around to most places. I would mostly visit my friends in the evenings, and we would all stay up till late, not socializing or drinking, but playing games, musing philosophically, and finding other means of continuing our existence. On the nights this continued for particularly long, I would have to cycle back halfway across the city, often in cold. This was usually quite pleasant. Cambridge is quite a safe city, and I generally enjoy being out in the dark, alone, under the yellow of the night lights. It was one of those nights, though, that I met what felt to me like the devil himself. It was on one of those long, quiet, lamplit roads on a particularly chilly February night. I was halfway home and slightly wary of it being 3 a.m. This was late even by my standards, and this put me somewhat on edge. My senses seemed to be more alert than usual, and I was unconsciously keeping an eye on every single shadow on the street, trying to avoid as many alcohol-fueled incidents as I could. As I turned into a street that told me I was not very far from where my apartment was located, I started to feel much more peaceful. It was halfway across the street, biking at my leisure, that I noticed a man in a dark jacket cycling around 20 feet in front of me. My senses suddenly sharpened again, due to the simple fact of him seeming to appear out of nowhere. Perhaps I had not been paying as much attention as I thought I was. The man was cycling quite slowly, and even while barely pedaling, I slowly started to draw near him. It also started to get quieter on the street. It took me a few moments to realize that I could not hear the man's bike or the many mechanical clicking sounds my bike often made. The quiet was eerie, that should have warned me, but not heeding what now seems like a very obvious warning, I kept cycling closer to the man. I found his speed quite peculiar, even more so that his dark attire, and so as I drew nearly level I glanced at his body. I say his body because his face was not very human. It was made of what can only be described as a shadow, and with eyes that seemed like the very depths of hell itself. One look left me lifeless, motionless, speechless, riding down the slope right next to him, too scared to move, too scared to act. And worst of all, I was unable to take my eyes off his. "This way is closed," he said, in a growling voice that made my hair stand on end. "This way is closed. Go back." That was all he said, but with those words the hold his eyes, its eyes had, over me was broken. I managed to find some life in my hands, and I braked as hard as I could, letting him get ahead of me. He continued to cycle ahead at his eerily slow pace, and then, as mysteriously as he had appeared in front of me, he was gone. He simply disappeared, and hurriedly into the shadows at the end of the street. The rest of the way back home for me was a fight against my own body. My mind would not stop reeling from the horror it had just experienced, and my heart was in my throat and willing to go down. I could not think. I could not rationalize. I had no refuge. I could hear again. I could hear the wind in my ears, the clunking of my pedal as I cycled as fast as I could, and unfortunately for me, I could hear someone riding a bike a little behind me. When I finally got home, I threw my bike and rushed into my first-floor apartment, refusing to look at what was surely there. I could still hear footsteps following me up the stairs, but I refused to acknowledge them as I rushed into my room as fast as I could and into the refuge of my bed. I could still see shadows under my front door as I finally decided to go to bed. They refused to go away. True story from 3:49 a.m., 25th of February, 2012. This is a part of a collection of real-life horror stories and memoirs currently being collected and compiled by Sam and Shahid Khan. For more, please visit and follow the writer's blog here. Story 5, Robert the Doll. In the late 1800s, Thomas Otto and his family moved into a mansion at the corner of Eaton and Simonton Streets in Key West, Florida, now known as the Artist House. The Ottos were known to be stern with their servants, sometimes even mistreating them. It was the treatment of one such Haitian servant that provides a twist in this story. This woman was hired to take care of their son, Robert. One day, Mrs. Otto supposedly witnessed her practicing black magic in their backyard and fired her before she left. The woman gave Robert a lifelike doll which stood 3 feet tall, had buttons for eyes, human hair believed to be Robert's, and was filled with straw. Dolls that resembled children were not unheard of during this time, but this one proved to be special. Robert named the doll after himself and often dressed it in his clothes. Robert, the doll, became his trustworthy companion. He took it with him on shopping trips into town. The doll had a seat at the dinner table where Robert would sneak at bites of food when his parents weren't looking. Robert would even be tucked into bed with the boy at night. Soon this innocent relationship took on a strange nature. Soon after, Robert chose to be referred to by his middle name, Jean. After being scolded by his mother, he told her that Robert was the doll's name not his. Jean was often heard in his tour room having conversations with Robert. Jean would say something in his childish manner, and responses could be heard in a much lower voice. Sometimes Jean would become very agitated, worrying the servants and his mother. She would, on occasion, burst in to find her son cowering in a corner, while Robert sat perched in a chair or on the bed glaring at him. This was only the beginning. Household objects would be found thrown across the room. Jean's toes turned up, mutilated, and giggling could be heard. Whenever these unusual acts took place, Jean always said, "Robert did it." The boy took the punishment, but always insisted that the blame was Robert's. As the mischief grew, more and more servants took their leave as new ones were hired. The Otto's relatives felt it was time to do something. With the recommendation of a great-aunt, Jean's parents removed Robert from his care and placed him in a box in the attic. This is where he resided for many years. After the death of his father, Jean was willed his boyhood home. He decided to live in the Victorian mansion with his new wife. Jean had become an artist and felt the house was spacious and would provide a place for him to paint. He went to the attic and dusted off his childhood toy. He became attached to the doll despite his wife's displeasure. Jean would take the doll along with them everywhere they went. He even sat in his favorite little chair while Jean and his wife slept nearby. The turret room became Robert's domain after Mrs. Otto moved him back to the attic. Their marriage slowly became sour until Mrs. Otto supposedly went insane and died of unknown reasons. Jean followed soon behind. Robert supposedly attacked people, sometimes locking them in the attic. People who passed by claimed to hear evil laughter coming from the turret room. For some time, Robert remained in the empty house by himself until a new family purchased the mansion and restored it. The doll was once again moved to the attic. This pleased it as much as the last time. The doll was often found throughout the house. On one certain night, Robert was found at the foot of the owner's bed, giggling with a kitchen knife in hand. This was enough to send them fleeing from the home. Robert was later moved to the East Martello Museum in Key West, where he sits perched in a glass box. Despite his new living quarters, the doll is believed to not have given up his menacing ways. Visitors and employees claim they have seen the doll move. His smile has been known to turn into a scowl. One employee cleaned Robert, turned off all the lights, and left for the night. The next day, he returned to find lights turned on, Robert sitting in a different position than the night before and a fresh layer of dust on his shoes. Some say he'll even curse you. If you want to take a picture of him, you must ask politely. He'll tilt his head in permission. However, if he doesn't and you take the picture anyways, a curse will befall upon you and anyone who accompanied you to the museum. The same will happen if you make fun of him. To this day, Robert remains at the East Martello Museum in his sailor's suit, clutching his stuffed lion, continuing his menacing ways. Story 6. All that we are. First it was the gays, then the Muslims, then the terrorists, then the gay terrorist Muslims. I don't know. It's hard to keep track of who you're meant to be hating when you're a straight, white male. I put that as my Facebook status once. 30 for likes. I felt like kind of a big deal. In a world so oversaturated with attention addicts, I don't see the issue with indulging in the odd hit of pure, uncut validation once in a while. It's a good rush, There was a time when I thought the whole idea of social networking was juvenile. I saw every tweet, blog entry, and status update as a child hanging from the monkey bars shouting at their mother for not looking. I'm not above that. No one is above that. Grow up. What does that even mean? At what age are you meant to stop enjoying positive reinforcements? Is growing up synonymous with being a jaded cynic? Forget that. Validate me. I'm going to be dead one day. Tell me that my observations are witty and relevant. Retweet me. Reblog me. I walk through crowds, tangent and clothed, yet invisible and unimportant. Just like the rest of you, some of you peacock to get a second glance. A real-life Facebook-like, let's all peacock and blend in together, right? 7 retweets, 26 likes. No one will remember your name, they will all remember mine. I catch the 5:15 train home and rarely get a seat. The train ride home is the only time it is socially acceptable to grind on strangers. 5 retweets, 17 Facebook likes. I return home from work at around 5:45 every weekday. Lock the front door, finish the last of my commutable cappuccino, and place the cup in the recycling bin. I remove my tie and drape it over the coat hanger on my living room door. I undo the top button of my $8.99 shirt and breathe a sigh of relief that the working day is done. I pull my iPhone from my pocket and scroll absently for around 5 minutes, and then I head to the basement. It's quite a nice basement. It's spacious and insulated. The floor is laminated and kept clean, and the walls are decorated with art prints and watercolor canvases. I paint some of them. Check out my Instagram when all of this is over. Maybe you'll like them. The smell isn't great down there sometimes, but that's a means to an end. I can deal with the smell. Soundproofing. That's the important part. After entering my basement, I turn right and head to the far wall. There will always be 2 objects of interest that I approach. One of them will usually be moving, the other one silent. With my iPhone still in hand, I open the camera and hold it landscape, tapping the screen to gain focus. I take several shots just to make sure that I get a good one, and then I lock the screen again. The one that moves usually begs me to let them go. They bargain and they plead. Sometimes they come on to me. I gesture to the silent and still one tied up next to them. I pull out the swollen black tongue and turn the gaunt, lifeless face towards them and remind them what they are, all that they are. It doesn't matter how many followers you have on Twitter when you're tied to a radiator in my basement. 12 retweets. I wish I could see their faces when they find out. I make the live one watch as I fill the small bathtub in the corner with lye. I make them watch as I untie the dead one and drag them over to the tub and slide them in. I then leave the 2 of them together overnight. By the morning, all that's left is a brownish, black sludge and a few brittle bones. It's always too much for the live one to stomach. I tell them again, it's all that they are. Sex, gender, race, religion, whatever, they all look the same after. A night in my tub. I have been documenting the whole thing from the start. Just a few more and my blah can go live. I don't know what to call it yet. Social macabre, maybe. I don't know. I'm going to be critical of whatever name I choose. Either way, once I share it, the internet is going to explode. I'll be viral. A social media pandemic infecting the feeds and personal profiles of people all over the world. They'll forget the names of my art pieces, but they will remember my name. I might even get my own hashtag. Story 7. Tacos de venado. I was born in Mexico. My father was a goat farmer, and my mother used to weave baskets so that we could have at least 2 meals per day. We were very poor, and me and my siblings had the misfortune of being born in extreme weather. My oldest brother was born on the coldest day of winter, my elder sister in a spring deluge, and I was born in the thick of summer. And despite the fact that the 80s had brought advances in the standard of living for the world's citizens, it seemed to have forgotten us in our tiny two-bedroom cabin. So when my father heard about the H-1B visa program through my uncle, he eagerly signed up. Every spring, he would go to work as a laborer on a pepper and tobacco farm in Texas. The work was hard, but the pay was good, and he was always home in time for Christmas, so he didn't complain. He was saving up money so that we could emigrate to the United States, and so he worked from 1988 until 1991. Saving what he could. He made sure not a penny was wasted. On the long winter bus ride from the farm to Mexico, he would sleep so that the hunger pangs would not bother him. He doesn't usually talk much about his days as a migrant worker, but he did tell us that one day, in the winter of 1989, I believe, he could not sleep. The bus had made a rest stop near a small taco stand. The tacos smell wonderful, and everyone on the bus formed a long line towards the taco stand, eager and salivating. The man behind the small, dirty counter was very friendly, he said, but there was something that was a little off about him. The man scooped out the steaming, spiced meat onto fresh, piping hot flour tortillas like a machine, taking the money in one hand and serving up a big loaded plate with the other. Tacos de venado. His voice rang out. Apparently he was selling venison tacos or deer meat. Comprensas deliciouses taquitos de venado. My father debated whether or not he should risk spending $2 of his hard-earned money. Fortunately, my father is quite impatient and detests long lines, so he went back to the bus and quickly fell asleep. The next winter the bus again made a rest stop at the man's taco stand, and again the passengers formed a long line along with other people. They had become addicted, they said. Every year they waited impatiently to return to the small, dingy taco stand. My father, of course, stayed on the bus. He was used to the feeling of hunger. He lived with it throughout his childhood. He would surely survive. So again he slept, dreaming of a big bowl of my mother's chicken soup with a side of hot corn tortillas, which we could afford by then. The next spring he left again. It wasn't a very good year. The weather was horrible, and so the crop yield was low. The farm had no choice but to let the workers go home a month early. My father said that the fellow workers were abuzz with excitement. They didn't have to eat their tacos in the cold this year. The men eagerly counted the number of miles, their excitement mounting as they drew closer to the rest stop. 3 more miles, 2 more miles, 1 more mile, until they finally reached the spot where the man had his taco stand, but then nothing. There was no sign of the stand or the man with his big steel pot of delicious, sweet deer meat, just an old woman selling paper match frogs and pinatas. The workers demanded to know what had happened to the man with the deer tacos. Had he moved to another location? Did he open up a restaurant? What happened? What? The old woman raised her hand, and the men fell silent. He was arrested just 2 months ago. A lot of the local farmers and various other men started to go missing in his village, and the police were completely dumbfounded. A small rumor was going around that the local butcher, or the taco man as you know him, could be involved. The police had no other leads, and so decided to follow up on that. What they saw shook them beyond belly. She was cut off by a man asking, "And so what about the dear tacos? When he gets out of jail, will he start making and selling them again?" The old woman chuckled and said, "Oh, he won't be leaving his cell for a long time, boys. You see, he wasn't very well liked in his village, and Venado was a nickname that he used to refer to his enemies." Bonus stories, Story 1. The Guardian Angel, and I am always with you. I was there from the time you were born. I stood in the delivery room, staring down at you before you could even open your eyes to see me. Your parents, relatives, and doctors couldn't see me there in the corner, watching you with cloudy eyes. But I was there from the time you were born, and I followed you home. I was with you always, your constant companion. You played with your toys alone, while I stared from all angles in nearby mirrors. My matted, clotted hair with oily sweat that hung off my dented forehead like glue. I was always your constant companion, drifting behind your mother's car on your ride to preschool. You alone in the bathroom, but I was on the other side of the door, wind whistling through the bruised hole in my throat, my arms twisted and hanging in their sockets as I stood hunched on the other side of the shower curtain. I wait and follow you. I follow and drift behind you. I'm not seen. I'm almost not there in light. You never saw me that morning as I sat across from you at the breakfast table, a shiny red clot hanging from an empty tooth socket as I gaped grotesquely at you. I wonder sometimes if you know I'm there. I think you are aware, but you'll never understand just how close I am. I spend hours of your day doing nothing more than breathing in your ear, breathing, gagging, really. I crave to be close to you, to always wrap my crippled arms around your neck. I lie near you every single night, cloudy eyes staring at your ceiling, underneath your bed, at your sleeping face in the dark. Yes, you caught me staring occasionally. Your parents came running down to your room one night when you screamed. You were just beginning to talk, so you were only able to cry out, "Man, man," in my room. You thought you'd never forget the sight of me, with my collapsed jaw hanging to my chest, swinging back and forth. I sank back into your closet, and your mother was unable to see me, though you pointed and pointed and pointed. You thought you'd never forget when they left that same night. You saw the closet door crack so softly, and me crawling across the floor to your bed on all fours, shambling and jerking movements as I pushed myself under your bed on disjointed limbs. You learned a new word for me, boogeyman. Not quite the monster you thought I was. I'm just waiting and following you always, touching your face with my knotted fingers as you sleep. You'll see me again soon, any day now. I'm coming, blunt and brutal. One day you'll walk across the road and I believe I'll plow into you with loud roar and a screech, you rolling on the pavement, rolling under wheels, blunt force metal fenders, and my fingers touching your face again and again as you stare up from the cold pavement with cloudy eyes, your matted, clotted hair hanging in your face and your jaw, unhinged and swinging to your chest. You'll see me approaching. No one else will see me. You will stare past them into my eyes, and I'll leer down at you. For the first time in our life, something like a smile will come over my face. You'll swear you're looking into a mirror as clotted red bubbles from our mouths. I'll lean down past the doctors and the oogling people and take you up in my crooked arms. Our faces will touch, my wings will unfurl, and then you'll have to follow me, and I am always with you. I am your guardian angel. Story 2. The Stain of Margaret Schilling. The Ridges, previously known as the Athens Lunatic Asylum, is famous among Ohio University students. The other week, I ran into a friend who recently graduated from, and when the conversation turned to spooky things, summer is a classic time to tell ghost stories. After all, he told me about a particularly creepy part of the Ridge's lore. This seemingly human outline is permanently emblazoned on the top floor of Wars and 20. That's right. It's not spray-painted on. It's been there for decades. The story goes that in 1978, back when the facility was still active as a mental asylum, a patient named Margaret Schilling abruptly disappeared. The hospital employees searched for weeks, but it wasn't until over a month later, on January 12, 1979, that she was discovered. Strangely, she was found in one of the closed-off, abandoned wards, and 20 had previously been used to house extremely infectious patients and was no longer in use. There are claims that she was either already completely decomposed or simply that she had clearly been dead for weeks. But the main point remains the same. She had apparently, soon after her disappearance, somehow ended up in Ward 20, where she completely disrobed before lying down on the floor and dying. The official cause was determined to be heart failure, and some people assume that as Ward 20 was unheated, she could have frozen to death in Ohio's bitter winter. Why she chose to lie down in such an orderly fashion before her death, and why she initially went to the abandoned ward, or why she stayed there until her death. These are all, of course, questions with answers unknown. As for the stain, it's explained best by Jessica Castle. It is more of a photograph negative than a stain. As you can see in my photos, there are windows in front of the stain. As her body decomposed, the fluids were constantly passed over and over again by the sunlight from the windows, developing a photograph of sorts. The story has been featured on TV programs, notably Fox's Scariest Places on Earth, but unfortunately I can't find the episode online anywhere, and these programs have added what is most likely nothing more than an embellishment. Supposedly, a girl went on one of the ghost tour of the Ridges, where she touched Margaret's stain. The rumor goes that she was then claimed by Margaret's spirit and was eventually driven to suicide over the possession. This part of the story is at best unsubstantiated and at worst simply fluff created by Fox, but it's still creepy enough to include here. For a specific reading on this particular story, as well as photos and personal accounts, you should visit the following links: Jessica Castle's Haunted Ohio University blog, Forgotten Ohio's Margaret Schilling haunting page. For more general information about the Ridges, they are absolutely packed with creepy history and rumors. So in the interest of simply whetting your appetite, I'm only including Margaret's story here today. Athens Lunatic Asylum on Wikipedia, the Ridges Mental Health Institution, and the Ridges Cemetery at Haunted Athens, Ohio. The Ridges at Forgotten Ohio. Official information and map from Ohio University Souls of the Asylum. a collection of channeled stories from Athens lunatic asylum patients buried at the Ridges Cemetery in Athens. Oh, by Doug and Berta Lockhart. Full disclosure. Our Amazon affiliate link is included here. Story 3. Bullied. I grew up in a small, quiet town called Durham. Everybody knew each other, and there was a beautiful forest nearby in which I lived in a wooden cabin. I lived with my father. My mother had died during labor. I had been forever pained with guilt at the fact that the beginning of my existence was the end of hers. Due to the circumstances, my father and I had a very close relationship. Ever since I could remember, I had never socialized with the children of my town, nor did I possess any desires to. I was shunned by the other children of my village. I have learned now that this was undoubtedly due to my familial situation, and in that day and age it was desire for a child to grow up with a single parent, let alone a single father. This was perhaps the reason that my father and I lived in the forest rather than the village itself, partially secluded from the small society. I recall one occasion in which I was approached by a boy of my age who snorted, "My mom says to stay away from you. She says your family ain't right." As a 6-year-old, I was perplexed by this statement and rather confused as to why he had said this and what he meant. I shrugged it off and continued to skim stones across the playground solitarily. When I was around the age of 7, a classmate of mine, Sarah Potts, went missing. All I can remember of Sarah is that her almost white blonde hair was always plaited into long pigtails at either side of her head and adorned with bright satin ribbons, and she had bright blue eyes. She would often glance at me from her desk in class, whispering to her friends and giggling. Before her eyes resided on her pencil and paper, though I was overly familiar with being frowned at. This was an extremely strange occurrence for our quaint, sleepy town. Neighbors spoke to each other on a daily basis. Any children playing out would be watched over immediately, and parents had no reason to worry about their children playing outside. That was until several days following Sarah's disappearance, when the frantic search parties had died down and the town came to the morbid conclusion that any hopes in finding the girl were futile. Communication between villagers broke down. Children were forbidden to play outside now, and a child wouldn't be seen without a parent by their side. Durham became a ghost town. I skipped down the darkening streets alone on my way home, triumphant as any young child would be at the fact that I now had the entire town to play in without facing the usual torment I succumbed to from the other children. Creaking open the wooden door, I walked to the kitchen where my father was dishing up the evening meal. I began to salivate with anticipation and hunger. I hadn't eaten all day again, as the village children, as usual, had stolen my lunch. "Sit down, darling. Smile, father." I jumped onto a wonky wooden chair, licking my lips. They didn't find Sarah. I slurped through mouthfuls of beef. "That poor child," murmured my father, his brow creasing with empathy. He took a bite of his own food and swallowed, before adding, "Were you tormented by those wicked children today, my dear?" I shook my head, chewing. "Good. I suppose the town has grown quiet following the disappearance." He swallowed his glass of water in 3 small gulps, taking his dish and cutlery to one side before leaving the room. Sucking at a piece of gristle caught in my tooth unsuccessfully, I used my little fingers to pry it out. I looked at what lay in my small hand before me a red snippet of ribbon, and a strand of long blonde hair. I smiled and continued eating. Story 4. Lauren. Right now, I'm a freshman in high school. I guess I could be called the weird type, the one who always sits alone, glaring at the more popular kids. I guess you could also say I have to put up with a lot of crap from them, since they aren't exactly the friendly type. The female leader of the group, Lauren, is the worst offender of them all. She thinks she's so great, with her perfect blonde curls on her head and her skinny figure. And I'll admit I do want to be like her. We were friends when we were younger, but that's long since over. My only friend is named Mary, and we've been friends since grade school. We got into a big fight in 7th grade, but she told me she never do anything to make me mad again. You really should stop obsessing over her. Mary sighs, shaking her head. I just wrinkle my nose in disgust. I hate Mary. She can be so annoying sometimes. Me and her are just alike. Though I don't want to be like her anymore. I want to be like Lauren. Beautiful Lauren, who can get all the cute boys she wants and have them at her disposal. I do not obsess over her. I snap. Why am I even your friend? She just rolls her eyes. If you like her so much, then go be her friend. Fine, I reply, grabbing my food and walking over to Lauren. Lauren, can I sit with you? I ask meekly. Oh, sure, she answers with a smile. Hey, we haven't hung out in so long. Maybe we could today. Lauren questions. That'd be great. How about my house at 6? And after a few minutes of conversing and me giving her my address, the bell rings and we go back to class. After school that day, I hurry back to my house. I giddily clean up the house a bit and make sure my parents are out of the house, so me and Lauren have plenty of alone time together. When Lauren arrives, we have a lot of fun watching TV and sharing laughs over the fun times he used to have, and everything is okay until she says she has to go. I insist that she stays longer, but she says she has cheerleading practice in the morning and has to leave. She's just at the door when I have a knife to her throat. Suddenly, it's as if I'm in 7th grade again, and I've got a knife held to Mary's throat. She begs me not to hurt her, almost in tears. I insist that she stays longer, but she says she really should leave, stating that she doesn't know why I'm mad, but that she never do anything to make me mad again. So I tell her that now I can be just like her now, and I let the blade slice a large gash in her neck. I'm brought back to reality when I hear Lauren's corpse hit the ground with a thud. I give out a sigh when I see my clothes are stained red now. But no matter, those are my old clothes. I carefully pull off Lauren's pretty blue dress, peel off my own clothes, and put the dress on. After a bit of hard work, I have got her scalp peeled off of her head and onto mine. I smile widely when I look in the mirror and see how beautiful I look. Honey, does your friend want to stay over for dinner? I hear my mom yell from downstairs. My grin stays plastered on my face while I touch my beautiful hair. No, I yell back, but I'll be down in a minute. I kneel down to Lauren's body and put my hand on her soft cheek. Oh, Lauren, I start. Now I can be just like you. Story 5. The hallway wasn't empty. Did you know that, once introduced to a routine, our brains are capable of accepting it to the extent that when something changes, it doesn't notice? The change could be small and harmless, an object there that wasn't, or something move to another room that you would normally duck around on your way out. You'd still duck around it. grabbing your coat in an expertly practiced movement of routine, never thinking twice. Most people never think twice. They have more important things to think about and do. And then there's us, the unfortunate ones who wake up. Waking up isn't pleasant, and it's not something you would ever want to experience. It isn't being imbued with special knowledge or given important details. It simply is, and it's simply awful. Let me explain in the best way I can, in hopes of helping you accept your natural defenses against what is. I've always been a terrible sleeper. I wake up often from vivid dream worlds that I sometimes wish I could return to. My life is nothing special. I'm unemployed and disabled and bored out of my mind most of the time. Anxiety-induced insomnia is a dance I've danced since childhood, when I would stay up for days at a time with little better to do than stare out my window all night. But it wasn't until I turned 25 that I started waking up. The night was just like any other night. I made myself dinner and settled down on my mattress placed on the floor of the living room. YouTube played in the background. My eyes were trained on the bowl of food and my phone. Its eyes were trained on me. Its eyes were trained on me. I knew something was wrong when I felt a lump in my throat and my pulse sped up considerably. But even though I could see the shape of a body in my peripheral vision, at the end of the dark hallway right in front of me, my eyes remained on my phone and food. My brain was fighting hard to censor this knowledge, unacceptable to my nightly routine, unfathomable to any human. When it was suddenly morning and I had only foggy memories of the night previous, I was left confused. My body felt sick, as if it had experienced a trauma I wasn't privy to. As the day went on, my memories pieced together what I couldn't recall. I made dinner. I sat down. YouTube was on in the background. My eyes were on my phone and my food. The hallway was empty. Its eyes were on me. Its eyes were on me. The figure moved. Sweat beaded my brow. My eyes still didn't look up, but I knew it was there now. It wasn't just moving. No, it was moving towards me in a way that was simply unnatural. It was bent at the waist, and its torso twisted sideways, with frail legs that took stiff and loud steps. From its mouth came a droning, croaking noise, rising in volume as its anger grew. Its arms were out at its sides, stretched towards me. I've never been able to look directly at it. If I do, I know I'll see something I was never meant to comprehend. I'm afraid that looking at it will cause damage that can never be reversed. A funny notion, considering we both know I'm done for. If you ever during your daily routine feel like something is wrong, or suddenly become tense and anxious, keep going through with it. Go about your day and think nothing of it. You will sincerely regret doing otherwise and waking up like some of us do. The hallway was never empty, and each night it comes closer. Story 6. I don't sleep anymore. Earlier this week, on Sunday night, I had a dream in which I knew I was asleep. I was stood outside of my house in torrential rain at night and thought I needed to get inside in order to wake up. I approached the front door and placed my knuckles onto the door window, ready to knock. I knew that my next action would bring me one step closer to consciousness. The moment I knocked on the door, the thudding sound of the knock was so loud, so frightening, and so real that it woke me from my sleep. Bang, bang, bang. I jumped up immediately and listened out for a further knock at the door. I was roasting hot, sweating profusely, and my heart was beating so hard. I don't think I would have been able to tell the difference between a knock at the door and my thudding heartbeat after I came to my senses and realized that the possibility of the door knocking at the exact moment of dreaming it is incredibly low. I fell back to sleep Monday. The very following night, I had the same dream. Right back outside the front of the house in the pouring rain again, intensely staring at the house, I slowly walked to the front door. This time it was open. I walked in and went straight into the kitchen. I opened the cutlery drawer and pulled out the largest meat knife I have. I looked into my reflection through the blade of the knife. If you stare directly into the reflection of your eyes for long enough, eventually it will hit you that someone is looking at you. You know it's your reflection, but for just a second, you forget and become self-conscious, as if it's somebody else behind your reflection's eyes. It didn't take a second of looking at my reflection through the blade to realize that somebody else was. Looking back, the moment I realized it was somebody else wearing my grin in the reflection, I slammed the cutlery drawer shut. Bang again. I shot up out of bed, the sound of the metal clanging in. The drawer, as it abruptly closed, was so defined and so crystal clear, it couldn't have been a dream. Really spooked this time, I went downstairs into the kitchen. I was half asleep and had to check. I opened the cutlery drawer. I was relieved to find the knife still in the drawer. I closed it and went back to bed. It took a little longer this time, but I fell asleep Tuesday night. My dream started with that grin in the reflection. From the look in his eyes, I could tell that the man in the reflection knew he was looking back at someone. Confused and scared, I found myself looking into the reflection of the knife already in my hand while stood outside of my house in the rain. The front door was open again. I walked into the house, directly up the stairs and into my bedroom. I looked at the bed and saw someone sleeping in it. It was me. I knew what I was going to do, but also knew that I couldn't stop myself. Instead, I kept think over and over again, wake up. My emotions were both into extremes at once. I was terrified, but at the same time I was thrilled and excited to kill. Wake up. I shot right out of bed and stood up. I was absolutely drenched in sweat, roasting hot, but relieved to find nobody stood in front of me with a knife. It took a few seconds to realize that I was gripping something tight in my hand. I knew what it was even before I looked down at it and saw my reflection in it. It was the meat knife, and this time the reflection in it looked terrified. I don't sleep anymore. Story 7. Typing. Stay calm, you know. I never actually thought about this, but I really need to type this since typing always calmed me down, even if only slightly. As you suspected, I typed this because, well, I'm feeling kind of nervous for no apparent reason, but I think I know why. I have this weird feeling that makes me want to hide with someone in a corner, or it could be that I watch one too many horror movies, which God knows has scared the crap out of me. I mean, I just watched Saw, and it was pretty good until the masked guy popped up, and I just jammed my eyes shut. There's no one in this house at the moment except for my brother who's sleeping in his bedroom, door closed. For some reason, though, when I strain my ears, I don't just hear my breathing or his snores, I hear a pattering sound as well. I didn't quite feel like checking where the noise came from, but simply dismissed it as my imagination. Just to make sure, though, I glanced at the kitchen. While I glance, though, I can't help but feel someone is watching me from over my other shoulder. Watching these exact words I am typing, I don't quite feel like moving or typing anymore. Oh God, the feeling I felt earlier was really bothering me, so I turned around, but there was nothing. I swear I saw a piece of cloth fluttering for a brief moment, then disappear, though. I think I'm going to go type in my room. Come to think of it, it's quite ironic how I, who absolutely adore watching horror movies, was feeling like this. Hey, why is it so quiet suddenly? Wasn't my brother snoring loudly just a second ago? No, he's probably just stopped snoring. Yay, that's holy shit. Holy fucking shit. I'm not getting up. I'm gonna just stay here. If I get out of this chair, it's going to follow me. It had a fucking pale face with black freaking eyes staring at me from the reflection on my goddamn computer screen. It's getting dark, but it's November now, and oh, but it shouldn't be getting dark this fast. I think someone forgot to close the window. It's kind of chilly, but why was the window open? I'm pretty sure I closed it. I think something's coming closer. What if it already killed my brother? He's not snoring anymore. I don't think I can type anymore. I have to, though. If I don't, it's going to see I'm not doing anything, and it's going to come for me. My fingers and arms are growing numb. I'm cold. I'm not getting up, though. I think it's breathing on me. Oh my God, it's beside me. Its head. I'm going to see its head soon. No, I have to keep typing. If I stop, I'm not going to be able to stay calm. My chest hurts. It's getting hard to breathe. Oh no. The door is opening by itself. There's creaking. Something's reaching over my shoulder. I'm not looking. No, I'm not going to fucking look. Its face is trying to get into my view. Holy shit, I can't breathe. I don't want to die. No, 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 no. Help. I'm not looking away from the keyboard. Leave me alone. Oh, could I hear my brother? He came down and asked me where the cookies were. I'm so relieved. I'll get back to typing in a minute. I'm going to turn around and tell my brother where it is. I'll finish typing in a bit. Thank goodness I have a Bororiok.